6 for the Fever. Turner, up fade. Turner kicks it. Hold three-pointer. Bottom!
Indiana,
7 on the shot clock, 25 seconds in regulation.
they gotta get to the rim.
Charles has to hoist and connects. Wow. The Indiana Fever prove their resiliency.
The impossible just happened. Down 21 points without their superstar, watching their teammate carried off the floor in agony, and somehow the Indiana Fever just pulled off the most defiant comeback in franchise history. But here's what the other channels won't tell you about this story. This wasn't just a basketball game, this was the exact moment Kelsey Mitchell silenced every critic who ever questioned whether she could carry a team when everything fell apart. And I'm Jackson Riley, and I've been following the digital breadcrumbs that everyone else missed, filtering through the noise to bring you the real story behind what happened when adversity tried to destroy Indiana, and instead created an MVP. If you're here for the truth about how crisis transforms athletes into legends, then you need to hit that subscribe button right now. Because what I'm about to show you isn't just game analysis, it's the psychology of greatness under pressure that the mainstream sports media completely missed. Here's your roadmap to what really happened. First, I'll break down the catastrophic injury crisis that should have ended Indiana's season. Then we'll dive into the family warfare and social media explosion that exposed the league's biggest problems. And finally, we'll analyze the exact moment Kelsey Mitchell transformed from overlooked star to undeniable MVP candidate, while her competition was literally carried off the floor. But let's start with the brutal reality that set everything in motion. You think you know about adversity in sports? Let me paint you the picture that other channels are too afraid to discuss honestly. Indiana Fever walked into this game against Connecticut already missing their 3 natural point guards. Caitlin Clark, 13 straight games on the sideline with that groin injury. Sydney Colson, done for the season with a torn ACL. Ari McDonald, broken foot, indefinitely out.
After Phoenix, it was a quick turnaround to figure out, how we're going to play without, Ari and Sid. And now we got to figure out how we're going to play without Soph. And we've got to figure out, who can play in certain roles. What are our substitution patterns going to be? What kind of wrinkles can we throw out there? It doesn't get easier. And I think we come back and have Minnesota twice, right? So it's really good mentally, physically, and emotionally for us. And then it gives us practice time, which we're going to need.
That's Coach Stephanie White admitting what no other team wants to face. They were operating without a floor general, completely rethinking their offense on the fly. But here's where the story gets deeper than just basketball strategy. I've been reading the signals from inside sources, and the temperature of the online conversation suggests this injury crisis wasn't just bad luck. It was the exact test this team needed to discover who they really were. Official sources won't tell you this, but if you follow the digital breadcrumbs, a different picture emerges about what happens when a team loses everything except their will to fight. And that fight was about to be tested in the most brutal way possible. Midway through the second quarter, everything changed in one devastating moment. Sophie Cunningham, driving hard to the rim, colliding with Bria Hartley in what would become the most controversial play of the season. The immediate reaction told you everything about how serious this was.
Sophie Cunningham, writhing around in pain, definitely hurt, and Sophie's one tough cookie. If Sophie's kicking and screaming like this, no Will Farrell. She's in pain. We even have Connecticut Sun players, look at that, Connecticut Sun players, Connecticut Sun training staff coming up to her as the Fever starts making their way down.
Look, when someone as tough as Sophie Cunningham is kicking and screaming in pain, and even the opposing team's medical staff is rushing over to help, that's not a routine basketball injury. That's a career-threatening moment that stops everyone cold. But here's what the other channels missed completely. This wasn't just an injury. This was the spark that ignited the biggest family versus league controversy of the year. And I've got the exclusive social media intelligence that proves it. While Sophie was getting that MRI, her family was declaring war on the entire WNBA establishment. And I mean literal war. Sophie's sister Lindsay, with over 25,000 followers, posted directly at the league. Maybe you should focus less on fining players for commenting on your poor officiating and more about hiring officials that are capable to call a consistent game and protect your athletes. Pathetic. That post alone generated over 1.2 million impressions. But it gets worse. Sophie's mother, Paula, before deleting her post, called Bria Hartley mean and out of control. These weren't random fans complaining. This was family declaring that the league was failing to protect their daughter. And here's where the digital detective work gets interesting. Because while mainstream coverage treated this as an isolated incident, I've been connecting the dots on what's really happening here.
How does she magically lower her shoulder into Sophie Cunningham's legs? Can somebody please explain that to me? Can somebody please explain those physics? Again, don't want to hear it, because this is a dirty play.
This is a dirty player. Direct accusation. No hedging, no diplomatic language. When you have commentators going on record calling someone a dirty player and family members publicly questioning the physics of what happened, you're not looking at an accident anymore, you're looking at a pattern. The Reddit analysis reveals the truth. Multiple users compiled evidence of Hartley's previous incidents: the Angel Reese hair pull, the Skylar Diggins body check, the Rebecca Allen floor slam. Video compilations showing this pattern got over 100,000 views within 24 hours. But while everyone was focused on the controversy, something else was happening that would change everything. In that same locker room where Sophie was fighting back tears, Kelsey Mitchell was making a decision that would redefine her entire career. Let me tell you about the psychology of what happened next, because this is where other channels completely missed the story. When Coach White saw Sophie go down, her first reaction was pure, unfiltered shock.
Do you have an update on Sophie? Yeah, MRI tomorrow.
Sorry, just quickly on Sophie. I mean, what's going through your mind when you see her down like that, and you're jogging over there?
I'm like, holy shit. I mean, especially the way that she fell and, how she was holding herself and how much pain she was in. At the time, it's like crap, and then you go down there and you see her and it's like, okay, just want her to calm down and be able to re-
Holy shit, that's a head coach in a press conference telling you exactly how devastating this moment was. But here's what that reaction reveals about the mental state of this team. They were watching their season potentially collapse in real time. 4 key players down. Rotation in shambles, facing one of the league's toughest teams. This is where most teams fold, where individual players start protecting themselves for next season. Kelsey Mitchell did the exact opposite. The live broadcast captured the genuine shock and horror as this injury unfolded.
Oh, and Cunningham is down. My goodness. Should be. A scary moment as we went to commercial. Sophie Cunningham hit the floor hard, and she is being helped off the floor, heading back to the locker room.
Multiple "oh God" reactions from professional commentators, the kind of visceral response that tells you this wasn't normal contact. But what's fascinating from a narrative psychology perspective is how this moment of team vulnerability became the exact catalyst for individual greatness. Okay, now let's get into the territory that official sources won't tell you, but the digital conversation is too loud to ignore. The online chatter suggests that Kelsey Mitchell saw her teammates going down and made a conscious decision. If the team was going to survive, it would be on her shoulders alone. While Mitchell was preparing for her takeover, the internet was exploding with family outrage that reached levels I've never seen in women's basketball. This is where the story becomes about more than basketball.
Bria Hartley deserves zero benefit of the doubt. And Sophie Cunningham's family not too happy. I believe this is Mama C. Hartley is a disgruntled player having trouble everywhere she goes. She's playing mean and plays out of control. Looked out of control to me. Maybe you should focus her sister. Maybe you should focus less on finding players for commenting on your poor officiating and more about hiring officials that are capable to call a consistent game and protect your athletes. Pathetic. Praying for you. The only good thing positive surrounding Sophie Cunningham coming out of this game, she looked in good spirits in the locker.
You have Sophie's family directly calling out a player as disgruntled and out of control, publicly challenging the league's officiating standards, and doing it all while their daughter is getting emergency medical care. The social intelligence here is crucial. TikTok creators reported this as one of the most requested topics, with channels dedicated to WNBA drama seeing 300% engagement increases. The family emotion was driving cross-platform sharing that turned a basketball injury into a cultural moment. But that brings us to the inevitable question that's really driving this entire narrative. How does a team respond when everything falls apart at once? Listen to that. It's how we live. It's how you all live. This isn't motivational speaking. This is a leader telling her team that resilience isn't a tactic, it's their identity. And that identity was about to be tested in the most public way possible. This is the kind of locker room culture that separates good teams from legendary ones. When your teammate is being carried off, when your season is hanging by a thread, when social media is exploding with controversy, you don't just survive, you prove who you really are. And Kelsey Mitchell was about to prove something that shocked the entire league. If you're appreciating this deeper analysis that goes beyond basic game coverage, then hit that like button and let me know in the comments what other stories need this level of investigation. Because what happened next wasn't just basketball, it was a masterclass in rising to moments that define careers.
I'm so proud of you. I'm proud of you too. Proud of you. I'm so proud of you guys. I know that sometimes it sounds like just a word when we talk about being resilient. But it's not, man. It's how we live. Yeah. It's how y'all live, and it's a tribute to you. It's a tribute to your connectedness, your togetherness, your toughness, your mindset. Your never give up gritty attitudes. Like, that's what it takes. That's what it takes.
Coming out of halftime, Kelsey Mitchell had scored just 4 points. Against a physical Connecticut defense, without her point guards, watching her teammates' season end, most players would have played it safe. Mitchell decided to make a statement that would echo for the rest of the season. 34 points in the second half and overtime, not 34 points in a blowout win. 34 points while fighting back from a 21-point deficit, in overtime, in the most pressure-packed situation imaginable. The efficiency numbers tell the story: 11 of 22 from the field, 5 of 8 from 3, 11 of 12 from the free throw line. But numbers don't capture what this really was, a player deciding that team crisis was going to become individual brilliance. And here's the competitive intelligence that other analysts missed. This wasn't just a great scoring night. This was Kelsey Mitchell passing Tamika Catchings for the most 30-point games in Fever franchise history. On the same night, her teammate suffered a season-ending injury. Against the team everyone was calling dirty. The symbolism is perfect, and the basketball world noticed immediately. Caitlin Clark, who wasn't even in the building, posted just 2 words on social media: MVP Kelsey. Think about that. The face of the franchise, the player everyone thought was the only superstar on the roster, publicly crowning her teammate as MVP material. That doesn't happen unless something special just occurred. But you don't have to take my word for how significant this performance was. Listen to Mitchell's own teammates making the MVP case.
Second half, you get 34 of your points just the last after halftime. What took over you? How did you get it done on the floor?
I think it was more about what we did from a standpoint of like the mindset and the mentality from half to half. It sucked for me first half. It just wasn't, and I think that, it wasn't as well for our group, but the resiliency is true in our room. Seeing Soph go down and then knowing what happened with Sid and knowing what happened with Ari, and then knowing what happened with Cece, it's like, I think a lot of it was just God and being able to like stay prepared and stay in your mental state to be able to compete. But I really think that that's the most resilient that we've ever been because of everything we've been through. So I think a lot of it you just tap into your team and you just love on your team, and I think, great things can happen.
If she's not MVP, MVP is crazy. That's not media hype. That's not fan voting. That's players who compete against MVP-level talent every night telling you what they just witnessed. The psychological impact here is massive. When your teammates are saying you belong in the MVP conversation, and they're saying it after watching you carry them through their darkest moment, that's how legends are made. But this story isn't just about individual greatness. It's about what happens when collective adversity meets individual excellence. What made Mitchell's performance possible was a supporting cast that refused to collapse. Odyssey Sims, signed on a hardship contract just to keep the roster legal, stepped in and played like she'd been part of the rotation all season. 19 points, 7 assists, breaking Connecticut's pressure and delivering Mitchell the ball in rhythm. Aliyah Boston anchored everything with her 15th double-double of the season, a new franchise record. Natasha Howard provided the physical presence to match Connecticut's intensity. Lexi Hull hit the dagger 3 that sealed the comeback. But here's what separates this from typical team basketball stories. Every single one of these contributions happened while the team was processing the emotional trauma of watching their teammates suffer a potentially career-threatening injury. The mental toughness required to execute at this level, under these circumstances, while social media was exploding with controversy about dirty play, that's championship-level character. And it created the kind of viral moment that transcends sports. The authentic family emotion drove engagement levels that sports content rarely achieves. Posts featuring Sophie's family criticism averaged 10 times more engagement than standard game content. User-generated compilations of controversial plays reached over 100,000 views within 24 hours. TikTok creators built entire audiences around this controversy. Reddit threads generated thousands of comments. Twitter engagement spiked to levels usually reserved for playoff games. Well, the temperature of the online conversation suggests something deeper happening here. Fans were connecting emotionally with the family protection narrative, the David versus Goliath comeback story, and the emergence of an unexpected MVP candidate all at the same time. This is viral content psychology at its most powerful, multiple emotional triggers hitting simultaneously. Listen to that locker room energy. We will never, never be counted out. MVP chants for Mitchell. Players embracing the underdog identity while celebrating the comeback that shouldn't have been possible. This is what championship culture sounds like, not when everything goes right, but when everything goes wrong and you still find a way to win. The determination in those voices, the confidence in their ability to overcome any adversity, that's the kind of team identity that leads to unexpected playoff runs and Cinderella stories. Here's what separates this analysis from the surface-level coverage you're getting elsewhere. I'm reading the meta-narratives that drive engagement, the family warfare angle that generated millions of social impressions, the villain versus hero storytelling that makes casual fans into passionate followers, the MVP conversation that legitimizes a player who is being overlooked. Other channels covered the game. I'm showing you the cultural moment that this game created, the social media explosion around Sophie's family criticism, the viral compilations of controversial plays, the authentic locker room emotion that builds parasocial connections with audiences, the psychological transformation of adversity into greatness. That's the difference between sports reporting and narrative analysis. This performance changed multiple storylines simultaneously. Kelsey Mitchell is now in the MVP conversation, with endorsements from Tamika Catchings, Dawn Staley, and even Caitlin Clark. Indiana proved they can compete at the highest level even without their biggest star. The Connecticut Sun villain narrative is now cemented in fan consciousness. Most importantly, this established a template for how teams can turn crisis into opportunity. When everything falls apart, greatness doesn't hide, it emerges. The injury crisis that should have ended their season became the catalyst that revealed their true character. The family controversy that could have been a distraction became fuel for an emotional comeback. The pressure that could have broken them became the forge that created an MVP candidate. But this story matters beyond basketball because it captures something universal about human nature under pressure. When faced with catastrophic adversity, do you collapse or do you discover strength you didn't know you had? The WNBA is experiencing unprecedented growth, 322% increase in online search growth, 413% increase in social engagement. Every controversy, every emotional moment, every authentic human story amplifies that growth exponentially. The family defending their daughter, the teammate stepping up when leadership was needed, the coach showing raw emotion in the face of crisis, the villain narrative that makes casual fans choose sides. These are the ingredients of cultural moments that transcend sports and create lasting fan connections. What happened in Connecticut wasn't just the largest comeback in Fever franchise history, it was a psychological case study in how greatness emerges from crisis, how authentic emotion drives viral engagement, how individual excellence and team character can coexist at the highest levels. Kelsey Mitchell didn't just score 38 points, she announced herself as an MVP candidate in the exact moment her team needed her most. Sophie Cunningham's family didn't just defend their daughter, they sparked a conversation about player protection that reached millions. Connecticut Sun didn't just lose a game, they cemented their role as the league's primary antagonist. And Indiana Fever didn't just overcome adversity, they transformed it into their competitive advantage. The digital breadcrumbs all point to the same conclusion. This was the night that changed everything. For Mitchell's MVP candidacy, for Indiana's playoff positioning, for the viral storytelling that drives WNBA engagement. Most importantly, it established the template for how modern athletes can turn their lowest moments into their defining victories. So here's my question for the narrative analysts in the comments. What story do you think emerges next from this viral cycle? Mitchell's MVP campaign, the Connecticut Sun revenge tour, the family advocacy for player protection, Let me know what angle you want me to investigate next, because this story is far from over. If this kind of deep narrative analysis is what you're looking for, then make sure you're subscribed with notifications on. Because while other channels give you game recaps, I'm connecting the dots on the stories that really drive this league forward. Share this with someone who thinks they understand what really happened that night. Because until you've seen the social media intelligence, the family warfare, and the psychological transformation, you haven't seen the real story. The Indiana Fever proved something that night. When everything collapses around you, that's not when you give up, that's when you discover what you're really made of. And Kelsey Mitchell showed the entire league what MVP-level greatness looks like when it matters most.